This is Join Us in France, episode 268. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent. And on a typical episode of Join Us in France, I talk with someone who's visited cool places in France and tells us about it. About once a month, I chat with my friend Elise, who is a licensed tour guide in France and loves to talk about local history and art. And some episodes are just me demystifying France for you because as a French person, I want to give you the tools you need to have a great time in France. And man, are there a lot of misconceptions about France circulating out there. On today's episode, a conversation with Denise Sum from Canada about her 10-day honeymoon in Provence. They stayed in Avignon, visited Arles, the Pont du Gard, Uzès, drove around the Petit Lubéron, and they found a lovely bed and breakfast there that she recommends, and Marseille. Denise's husband is a chef, so they paid attention to restaurants and have great recommendations for lovely places to eat. They did this trip with a combination of train and car rental, which is really smart. Show notes for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/268. That's the number 268. And if you're planning a trip to France, the site is chock full of great resources. You should check it out. Bonjour, Denise, and welcome to Join Us in France.
Thank you for having me.
It's very nice to have you all the way from Canada.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
So today we're going to talk about your honeymoon in Provence. Well, was it Provence exactly, or you weren't on the Riviera, right? You were in Provence.
Not on the Riviera, mostly in the Luberon and part of the Gard area, which I guess technically is not Provence.
Sure. It's Occitanie, technically, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, very nice. And when was your honeymoon?
So we were traveling for 10 days from September 24th to October 3rd this year.
Oh, wow. You're brand new newlywed. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That's exciting. Okay, so you're from Canada, and was this your first trip to France?
So it was my third trip to France. I've been in Paris and the Loire region and Burgundy before.
Yeah.
But this was my husband's first time in France.
Wow, exciting. And why did you pick France for your honeymoon? That's kind of an obvious question, but let's try it.
Well, so my husband is a chef, so he doesn't speak French, but he speaks kitchen French. And of course, there's a strong culinary tradition, so it was very exciting for him to finally be able to experience that. And I've always wanted to go to Provence, but usually my previous trips to France, it wasn't at a good time of year. Like it was maybe a bit too cold to go down south. So this time I thought, okay, end of September, beginning of October, it's still warm, but not too hot. So it was actually perfect time of year, and I would really recommend it as a good time to visit.
I agree. All right, so let's talk about what you did exactly and some of the things you enjoyed particularly. And it's great that your husband's a chef because probably he had some opinions about the restaurants you went to. So that's good to know.
Yes. So we flew direct from Toronto to Paris, to Charles de Gaulle, but we didn't spend any time in Paris. We thought we'd save that for an entire separate trip. Mm-hmm. So from Charles de Gaulle, we actually took the train straight to Avignon. Uh-huh. And then we were there for a couple of days. We picked up the rental car, and then we drove around to the Gare area, and then drove through the Luberon, and then we drove to Marseille. Yeah. Drop the car off there. You don't want to drive in Marseille, and then train back to Paris. So that was kind of an outline of our trip.
Right. And did you feel like that was an adequate amount of time everywhere you went?
Oh, it's never enough, right? But with a balance of seeing a few different things and also having a few days to kind of take it slow and relax, it was a good pace. Maybe in hindsight, a couple more days would have been even better, but I think that's the case with any trip. If it's a good destination, you always want to have more time.
So of all these places, which one would you say was your favorite?
So I think there's a small town near the Pont du Gard called Uzès.
Uzès, yeah.
And yes, and we really ended up enjoying that one.
Yeah.
It's not too big. It's not too touristy. Yeah. You can just kind of take your time. We had actually planned to also go to Nîmes, but we loved Uzès so much we just stayed there the whole day. We were going to try to squeeze the two in one day, and I think with this whole region, if you spend too much time running around and trying to pack too much into your schedule, you might miss the enjoyment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's true anywhere in France, really. I mean, people have a tendency to really want to pack a lot of things in, and I tend to not agree with that. I mean, if you're a meticulous planner and everything goes just right, yes, you can do a lot of things, but it's a lot to ask.
Yeah. So aside from Uzès, our other favorite we spent 3 nights in the Lubéron, and we stayed in a really lovely bed and breakfast in Bonnieu. Mm-hmm. And that was a really good base to go to some of those hilltop towns and just drive around and wander. I mean, you don't really have an agenda. You just kind of see where the day takes you. And so that was really nice.
That's nice.
And there's so many towns. That's the challenge. I did a lot of research before we went, and they all look so picturesque. But we really enjoyed Roussillon, which is in that ochre deposit, so everything is that beautiful red orange color, and it really sets it apart from some of the other towns, just the look of it. So we really enjoyed that.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's take it from the top. Your first 2 nights were in Avignon.
That's right. We rented an apartment right in the town center, so it was perfect for us.
And so you found this apartment on booking.com.
That's right.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know that you can look for apartments on Booking, but there's on the left side there's a whole ton of things that you can select. So if you want a villa or an apartment or something, you can select it there, and it makes it easy to find stuff.
It does, and I do book a lot of my hotels through Booking. So if you use them a lot, I don't really know technically how it works, but you get some loyalty points and they give you some discounts. And the apartment was lovely. The host was great. He met us personally. And I was talking to him, and he doesn't list it on Airbnb or any other, VRBO or anything else, because sometimes people kind of list it on multiple sites. But he just did it on Booking, and it was great. It had a nice, actually quite large outdoor terrace. So we were eating our breakfast there every morning outside.
That's very nice. Yeah, and I should mention that I have an affiliate relationship with Booking. So if you go to joinusinfrance.com, at the bottom of any page, you'll see an ad for Booking. And if you click on that, the show gets a little commission. And I don't think it costs any extra. I mean, I haven't been able to test it, but I think it's exactly the same price for you. It's just that they give a little commission. So, full disclosure.
Oh, that's great. I will try that next time. Yeah.
Full disclosure. Okay. And and so did you cook for yourself? Did you make your husband cook on his honeymoon or did you go out?
We went out a lot, but one of the B&Bs we stayed in Bonnieu, that one had a lovely kind of kitchen by the pool, like in a separate building, kind of outdoor
yes.
kitchen.
Yes, that's very French. French people love those.
That's That's what I thought. So it's not part of the main house. It's just the standalone kitchen.
Yes.
And by that point, we were sort of in the middle of the trip. So as much as the restaurants were wonderful, it does get a bit like intense eating such big, heavy meals every day. So it was a welcome change. And also it gives us the opportunity to check out the markets and buy some of the fresh produce and seafood. So he made like a seafood stew, and you just have some baguette and cheese. So I really thought that was a good idea to cook some meals in the middle of the trip.
Yeah, that's great. So in Avignon, there's a couple of places you seem to have liked, La Fourchette and La Gape.
Yes. So I should say I did all the researching for accommodations and most of the sightseeing, but my husband, I just left all the restaurants to him. Mm-hmm. He did a lot of research. It's very difficult because you come all the way and you don't want to have a bad meal, you know?
Sure.
So we had these 2 lovely dinners in Avignon, both of them very close to the center, so within the walled portion of the city. And La Fourchette is a bit more traditional. I understand it's been around for many years, and I had the beef stew there. It's their signature dish from what they told me. So that was very good. And profiterole.
Ooh, nice.
And La Gape is a little bit more modern, a little some kind of other influences in the cuisine, and they had some lovely fish. So both were excellent, and you can choose like a menu with 2 courses, or you could do 3 courses. So, it's fancy-ish, but not like it's not super casual, but it's also not very, very formal. You don't have to dress up or anything.
Right, you don't have to dress up. Did you have to reserve, or I assume that late September, probably not?
Well, you know what? We did reserve. We reserved in Canada, like before we came, because the restaurants is very important to us, so we don't want to risk it, you know. And you know what? I would say both restaurants we were dining midweek, and as we were sitting there, we did see a few times people walked in trying to get a table, and they were turned down. So even in end of September, in a Tuesday or a Wednesday, I think it was, if you really have your heart set, I would say reserve. Just to be safe, reserve.
And you did it online, or did you call them?
I think he emailed them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. That makes it easy.
Yes.
Very nice. And then you went to Arles also? What did you think of Arles? This is a place that people either love it or they think, meh.
We loved it.
Oh, good.
I mean, it was perfect for a day trip, you know. So at this point, we didn't have the rental car. We just took the train from Avignon, which is quite easy.
Yeah.
And they have different bundles or city passes. So we got a pass called La Liberté. And I forget, I think it's something like 12 euros, 15 euros, something like that.
Yeah.
And you can get entrance to a long list of monuments and up to 5 museums.
Wow.
And the pass is actually good for, like, you don't have to do it all in one day. Of course, we tried to do as much in one day, but actually we didn't, of course, see everything that's included. So we left our passes with the rental apartment owner, and we told him, why don't you give this to the next guests, because they can still use it. And it has a lot of the main Roman kind of monuments, like Les Arènes, the ancient theater. They have the old Roman baths. So
I think Arles is just if you like the Roman period and that type of history, it's just fantastic. They have so many places you can visit, and they're kept very well, I think.
Yes, and they're all very close together.
Yeah.
So it's very walkable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite touristy in the sense that, you know, you walk down certain main roads and there's tons of gift shops all selling the same things. And, you know, but I think it's touristy for a good reason. You know, there's a lot of the Roman ruins and also the places you can visit where Van Gogh did some of his paintings, you know. So so it was a nice leisurely day, and we also visited the Musée Reatu, which is an art museum. They have some more modern art. They have a few Picassos. They had a photography exhibit when we were there. And it's not a huge museum, so you really feel like, you know, you can take it in an hour or 2 hours and get the highlights. So that was quite enjoyable too.
Excellent. All right. So then you moved on to the Gare.
Yeah. So in the Gare area, so by that point we were in the rental car, we were driving. And
so you picked it up at the train station, presumably?
Yes, we picked it up at the TGV, like the Avignon TGV station, because there's the city center station. But most of the rental car pickups are in the other train station, which is a little bit outside of town, but not very far at all. So we drove first to the Pont du Gard, you know, and
what did you think of that?
It's, you know, it's stunning. It's really impressive feat of architecture and how it's still standing after so many years. And actually, I listened to your podcast. There was some episodes mentioning the Pont du Gard and different ways to see it. So we enjoyed just walking. They do have the option you can kayak below, and we saw people doing that. But we decided to just walk, and we looked at the museum. I think a lot of people don't go to the museum.
But it's nice.
It is nice, and there's a movie theater, and they have a short film. So, but it was really not crowded at all in the indoor building. So the Pont du Gard was quite impressive, and we enjoyed that. And then we checked into our B&B, which is not in Uzès. It's actually in a very small town called Baron. I think it's like less than 1,000 people living in that town. Like, it's very small. But that's what we wanted. You feel it's so quiet. You're really in the country. There's vineyards around. And it's a really small property, like just 6 rooms, I believe. So it's quite intimate, and the hosts were the loveliest people. So it's actually, I think, when you stay in a B&B, like, part of the experience is talking to the host, getting to know them, and also the other guests, you know, around the breakfast area, or around the swimming pool. So it was really nice.
Did you also find that one on booking.com, or did you book it directly?
That one, oh my goodness. Around Provence or Lubéron and Gard area, there's just so many beautiful properties. Like, it's really, really hard to choose, but there is a website called Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and that website has a very small number of kind of boutique-style properties, and it was
That's
nice.
where you found it.
I found it there, and then I was talking to the hosts about how they list themselves on that website, and they said, oh yes, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they come and view the properties at least once a year, like, to make sure it's still up to the same standard. And they send secret guests, like, they will come, but they won't announce, you know, and they're undercover. So I thought that was interesting.
Very good.
But so it was a very unique property. The couple that owns it, one is French and one is from Belgium. And they have this B&B between, I don't know, something like May until October. Like, they were almost going to close it right after we left. Like, they closed it down for the season. And then they go to Reunion Island for the rest of the year. I thought, my goodness, this is no wonder they're so relaxed and happy.
It's not a bad life, is it?
And so they didn't have a restaurant in the B&B, but at night they have a private chef that comes in, and you have to reserve because it's such a small number of guests, so they have to know how much food to prepare. And certain nights you can eat there in the facility with the private chef, outdoors. So that was really special.
That's very nice. Okay, and then you visited Uzès, which you liked a lot.
Yes. So Uzès, I went to the spa. My husband does not like massages, so he wandered around while I was getting my treatment. And there's a spa. It's a L'Occitane spa, like affiliated with that company, L'Occitane de Provence.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which we know in Canada. It's
all over the world, yeah.
It's all over. So it was kind of neat to be in France and actually get to go to a spa that uses all their products.
In Occitanie, no less.
Exactly. and you can get a massage, but they also have their version of a Roman bath, like a kind of hammam, and then they have the bath there.
Nice.
So before or after your treatment, you can kind of hang around and enjoy those facilities. And then we ate lunch there. So it's inside a hotel called La Maison d'Uzès. And then their restaurant is called La Table d'Uzès.
Okay.
And the restaurant has 1 Michelin star. So that was our fanciest meal, but it was lunch. So it was actually like...
Not so expensive.
It wasn't. My husband got 3-course lunch, 35 euros, something like that. And for me, I did a spa and lunch package. You get a 1-hour massage, and then you get the 3-course lunch. And it's almost like you're getting the lunch for free because it was like 100 euros. But then the massage is like 100 euros.
Right. So, oh, that's cool.
That's my tip for anyone if you're wanting to visit like quite a luxurious property, one of those relais and chateau properties, and you don't really want to spend so much money to stay there, you can go for lunch, and a lot of them have this lunch and spa deal because I looked at quite a few. So
very good.
It was very fancy. So you felt really, really pampered for sure.
Excellent. And then you went to an exhibit, the Bauhaus.
Yeah, so they have the Bauhaus exhibit. Actually, so on the day that we were in Uzès, they were doing Nuit Blanche, like when all the galleries stay open late, and it's sort of open doors and everything is open and you can walk around. So we didn't actually stay all the way into the night, but during the daytime, different galleries were already preparing, so we got to see that. Yeah, and this year is the Bauhaus, I think 100-year anniversary. So just around Europe, they are doing a lot of celebrations, and so that was a free exhibit.
Right. Nice.
And the medieval garden, I would say, if anyone is going to Uzès, the medieval garden is really quite interesting, even if you're not really into plants or flowers.
Right.
It's small. When you go there, they give you an herbal tea that they made there, like a tisane. And they have a tower. You can walk up to the top, although don't do it if you're claustrophobic. It's very, very close. Like you can't have a person going up and a person going down at the same time.
Very that tight, huh?
Which is tricky because when you're on the bottom, you don't know if someone is going to come down.
Right. You have to kind of call ahead.
Exactly. But once you're at the top, you have this panoramic view over the whole town.
Oh.
It's a beautiful view there. And then the garden, of course, if you are interested in a lot of plants, they have a section on medicinal plants. They have poisonous plants. They have different kinds of flowers with some explanations. So you can actually spend a good amount of time in that garden. Yeah.
Lovely. And then a nice restaurant for dinner.
Yeah, so our host recommended a restaurant called Volver, which is not really in any town. I mean, it's sort of off of the highway between Uzès and Baron. So it's sort of just a random house on the side of the road. But actually, when we went that night, our hosts were dining there too. So we know it's good because they choose to go there. And again, not fancy, but they had a wonderful octopus. And you can eat inside or outside. And just really not fussy, not too stuffy, just good homemade food. So that
Excellent.
was very enjoyable. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. And then you moved on to the Petit Lubéron.
Mm-hmm.
Which is that's very nice.
Yeah, so I mean, when I was doing my research in the area, the Luberon is sort of that quintessential Provence experience that most North Americans are thinking of when they go to that part of France with the lavender fields or the sunflowers. Of course, this time of year, the lavender is not really, it's, I mean, there's some fields you see that the lavender used to be there.
Right.
Or it's a little bit purplish. You can see there's some remnants, but yeah, it's not the way it would be in July.
Right. Right.
But so we drove there and we stayed in another B&B called Le Clos Les Edens in Bonnieu. It's in Bonnieu, but it's actually like on the, I don't want to say the lower level, but it's at the bottom of the hill.
Okay.
Because a lot of the restaurants and sites are at the top of a hill. Mm-hmm. So, which I did not realize, like these things are hard to appreciate until you're actually there.
Yes.
Like the region is very hilly.
Yes.
And so some things look on the map very, very close together.
But surprise!
Yeah, because the driving, like, if you're going to the top of the hill, it's all these hairpin turns back and forth. So it takes a little longer than you might think to go between. So that's why we were very glad that we were in a town that's really close to so many other small towns.
Right.
So, I mean, we could have gone further, but we really stayed within a 15, 20-minute radius of our B&B the whole 3.5 days that we were there.
Right. There's so much to see. Like
there really is. Yeah. So you can do, some people go nuts and you're going to like 4 villages in a day because you can. And some of the small villages, there's really not too much in terms of attractions per se. It's more wandering around. Some are very sleepy. But the day that we did the most is, I think we did 3. Yes, 3 towns. Mm-hmm. We did Menerbes, which I think Peter Mayle either lived there or spent a lot of time there writing those books. Mm-hmm. So I think that's their claim to fame. And Menerbes, along with a few of the other towns in the Luberon, they're listed as something like most beautiful towns in France. There's some listings, so that's one of them. Yeah. Although, I don't know how they decide. They're all beautiful in their own way. So Menerbes, we went, and there's a nice bistro there called Bistro Le Cinq, and it's right overlooking the valley. So a lot of people go there. That was recommended to us by our B&B hosts.
Yeah, that would look nice.
It's beautiful. I mean, you just sit there in a lounge chair, and it's funny. We were there a bit late, so they weren't serving lunch anymore. But they do stay open throughout the day, which is good to know because some restaurants, they close in the afternoon.
Yes.
So this one, they have a snack menu for the
for the afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had some sardines and we had some goat cheese salad, and honestly, it was filling enough, really. So we said, wow, if this is a snack, I don't know what's the entree going to be like. Yeah.
That's great.
So then we drove onward to Lacoste.
Yes.
Which is famous for their chateau.
Yes.
The chateau, used to be the residence of the Marquis de Sade.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, but about a decade or so ago, it's bought by the fashion designer,
right?
Pierre Cardin, who hosts some, I think, performances there, outdoor performances in the summer, because it's a castle, but it's in ruins. Mm-hmm. It's not a castle like Versailles. You walk around inside. You can't go in, but it's quite quite interesting to walk outside and walk around it. And then from there, you can walk a bit further, and then that takes you into the town center. Although it was Sunday when we went, so really most things were closed. People are in their home practicing piano or walking their dog. So it was quite quiet.
It felt sleepy.
Yeah, but it was nice because there was one cafe that was open, and we just sat there. And then we went onward to Goult, Goult.
Yeah, Goult.
Goult.
I'm not sure how they say it. I would say Goult, but I'm not sure.
Goult.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, again. And these places are easy to find parking. I was worried. I'm the one who's a little bit more of I don't want to say a stressed out traveler, but I prepare a lot because I don't want to be stuck looking for parking. But actually, there's no problem. I think maybe only during the weekends in high season, I've heard,
sure.
If you go late in the day, the parking lot is full, but we had no problem.
Good.
So you could easily go around and you're not thinking, oh my gosh, I paid for parking. I have to stay for a long time kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Roussillon was another day.
I see. Okay.
And we spent a bit more time in Roussillon because on the edge of the town, there's this place called Sentier des Ocres.
Yep.
Pardon my pronunciation.
No, you're saying it good. Sentier des Ocres, yeah.
Yeah, so they have 2 hiking trails, like different loops, and you can really be in there with the ochre deposits and get some really nice photos and walk around. So I definitely recommend doing that.
That's very scenic. It's beautiful.
It is. It's kind of, there is, if you go further east, there is more ochre deposits, and they call it Le Colorado Provençal. We didn't make it out that far, but it is. I haven't been to Colorado, but I've been to Arizona. Where they have these red rock parks, and it looks like that, and no one would have expected that in the south of France.
Yeah, it's kind of an oddity.
Yeah, so it's beautiful, and honestly, they have the 2 different hiking loops. We did the shorter one because we were kind of getting hungry, but the shorter one is 30 minutes. It's very short. So if you really want to get a bit more of a proper hike, I would say try the longer one.
Okay.
The shorter one is good though. If you have people with maybe some mobility impairment, there is some up and down, but it's quite gentle, I would say.
Very nice.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's Roussillon, the actual town itself, and more shops and boutiques and cats walking around. It's,
pottery stores.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think French people buy pottery all the time with all the stores that they have in touristy places.
It's true.
Very nice. Oh, and then you hired a photographer.
Oh, yes. So we did. So for our last night in the Lubéron region, we did a little sunset photo shoot just to capture the memories. I've never done that before on a vacation. But, after we just got married, when you're getting married, you really learn about and research photography and that kind of thing. So that's how I got the idea. And I would say, we started our photos on the actual property of the B&B. So we were telling some of the friends that we met there. And, at first I was a little embarrassed. I'm like, oh, my goodness, doesn't it look kind of narcissistic? But you know what? All the other trips we've done as a couple, we end up coming home and then we have a bunch of selfies.
Right. Which are fine, but it's not the same.
We have some photos that we asked someone to take for us, and it's a little lopsided,
Yeah.
So for
a professional is good.
Yeah, it was really nice. And actually, again, I researched a lot of photographers, trying to find one that's bilingual. And they're quite reasonable in at least what I found in that region. A lot of them are also wedding photographers that do portraits on the side.
Yeah.
And, for a 90-minute shoot, you're looking between like 100, 250 euros, and then they give you all these edited photos that you can print and make a book. So,
nice.
I thought it was a nice thing to do, and we have a nice way to capture those memories.
I agree. It's good to have a pro photographer. It makes all the difference.
Yeah. So that was our time in the Lubéron, and as I said, that was the particular B&B with the outdoor kitchen that we.
So you cooked there, yes.
Yeah, 2 dinners we cooked, and sometimes other people were cooking or using the fridge to store things. So you socialize with the other guests, and it's a really nice chance to meet people. I mean, one time there was another group of people from the US, and they were cooking, and we ended up sitting under the stars together all night, drinking wine and, just sharing our different experiences. So
that's great.
That was really nice and relaxing. Yeah.
That's good. And then you have your last night.
Yep. So we drove to Marseille, which was a quick drive, actually, like faster than we expected. We stopped just briefly in Lourmarin. Mm-hmm. So we drove straight to the rental car to drop off our car.
Good idea.
And the rental cars are, again, near the train station.
Yeah.
Saint-Charles station. So that was pretty easy. And then, so we had about 1.5 days in Marseille because our train was the following day, but late in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a lunch reservation at Petit Cabanon. Again, like kind of mid-range French cuisine.
Mm-hmm. Was it good?
And it was good. I'm trying to remember.
Maybe not too memorable.
I remember it being good, but it was not, the top meal of the trip. And after lunch, we hiked up to the highest point, the Notre Dame de la Garde, which is the big cathedral.
Yeah.
And it's funny because as we were walking in the sun, even in Marseille, beginning of October, it's still very warm, like high 20s. So we were feeling the sun,
mm-hmm.
and there's a little tourist train that can take you up there.
Yes.
It's kind of funny because it looks really like a little train, like a children's train set. And we were looking at those people saying, "Oh my goodness, look at those people!" And because it moves so slow, that train.
Yes.
and it looks a little cute, and
Yeah, it's a little tourist train. Yeah.
And we thought, oh wow, we're just gonna walk. And then as you're going towards the top, we started thinking, oh man, those people were smart. we're like sweating, like it was.
And it's not an interesting walk up.
No,
there's nothing much. I mean, I've done it both ways. I'd take the little train, yeah.
now you know what? I would take the train. Normally when I travel, I just use public transit, and I don't do a lot of these like tourist type things. But I would say, and particularly, I mean, we're young and in pretty good shape, I'd like to think. But if you did have any issues, it's because some parts it's quite uphill and quite steep. So anyway, I think from the... I
think there's a public bus also that will take you up there.
There is.
But I think I don't remember. We walked down the hill once, and I thought, well, this is boring.
There's nothing particularly scenic for sure. But once you get up to the top, it's worth it.
It's very nice,
just the stunning architecture of the church itself,
mm-hmm.
With the striped kind of pattern.
It's very unusual. It's very recognizable.
Exactly, and then really you can. It's almost a 360 view of the city.
Yeah.
So it was great for us to do on our, almost the first thing we did when we got in the town, because then that way you get your bearings. You can kind of see where certain landmarks are
mm-hmm.
from above. So that was quite helpful. And the rest of the day we did a little bit of shopping and just more wandering around.
So you went to the Museum. I've never been there. What is it like?
Oh, Okay, so the Musée, we went the following day, and it was built in 2013 when Marseille was the Europe capital of culture that year. Mm-hmm. And so I think they were building it in preparation for that, to showcase the old port area and kind of revitalize it. Mm-hmm. It's definitely worth going to. Actually, the majority of the building, it's free.
I see.
You can walk around. The architecture, I hope I sent you a picture, but it's beautiful. There's some outdoor
No, you didn't.
spaces.
You're going to have to do that.
There's garden. Okay, I put it on the group. I put it on the Facebook group. And there's quite a lot of benches and picnic tables. So actually, even if you just don't want to go and see the exhibits, but you want to
just enjoy the area,
there's actually a lot of places to hang out. It's almost like they're welcoming you to sit there, which, sometimes isn't the case. So it's...
yeah, it's nice.
Beautiful view. And then the exhibits, they have some temporary exhibits. We didn't see them all. You can buy a ticket, and then the price varies depending on how many exhibits you want to see.
I see.
There was one about, it was called Island Time, and the theme was islands around the world, and they were talking about mythical islands. They were talking about islands as prisons. They were talking about, islands in film and literature. And that was kind of what it was about.
It's interesting.
And it was quite broad in range and quite interesting. And then there was another exhibit about more of the Mediterranean region and the agricultural history. That was a little dry for me because they're literally talking about how do you farm the land, and I don't.
Not an interest of yours.
No, but if it is, I would say you should go.
Sure.
So quite a range of exhibits. They do have, I would say, they have 2 restaurants in there, and one is like a cafeteria style, more casual one, like buffet rather. But it was very expensive, so we didn't go there. And then they have a fine dining restaurant, but again, really expensive and kind of quite mixed reviews when I was looking. So we we left, and then we went to Le Panier area to walk around and find somewhere for lunch. But the problem is you got to time yourself, because if you end up spending too long and then the lunch restaurants have closed.
Right.
Only those really tourist trap ones are open, the ones that serve the lunch, the service continue kind of thing, like all through the day. So the lunch was
Yeah.
So I would say try to time yourself properly.
Right, and then you went to La Savonnerie de la Licorne. I'm kind of interested in that because I love soaps.
Yeah, so, Marseille is famous for their soaps.
Yeah.
And it's made traditionally with olive oil, and the soaps, they're not like super fancy, but, you can see them at the store kind of cut the soap, and then they put the stamp with their logo on it.
So you can see the manufacturing a little bit.
Yeah, so this one, it has a few locations in Marseille. So I don't know if all of them you can see the people making the soaps. But again, in my research, it seemed that this is one of the last ones that's making the soap the traditional way. So I got some souvenirs there. It's good to do shopping on your last stop, so you're not carrying the goodies around everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And the branch that I went to is in the area called, I think, Le Cours Julien. No, what is it? Pardon me. Because there's an area, there's like a street, and then there's all kinds of restaurants and cafes.
Well, you can send it to me later, and I'll add it to the show notes. It's okay if you can't find it. But I do love those little soaps. They don't have to be from Provence, especially. But I have rediscovered the joy of washing my body with a bar of soap. And it's so much better than the than the bottled stuff. I don't know why, because I grew up on bars of soap, right? And then everybody went to these bottled whatever
the
gel.
wash.
Yes. And I have a good friend who's been on the podcast, actually. I can't remember what episode, but we were visiting Nice, and she bought a bunch of bars of soap, and I said, well, I'll buy a couple. Let's see. And I love them. I'm totally converted.
And they smell beautiful. You can get the lavender one, which is very typical, or the lemon verbena. So I did look at my Google document, and it is called Le Cours Julien.
Julien, okay.
And that's the name of the street area. So they have boutiques, they have some used bookstores, and I went both at night and then I went in the day. And they also have like some street art.
Oh, cool.
So it's quite fun to walk around there. And the restaurants are a lot better than the ones near the port, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. So to finish up, I want to ask you for your general an overview of Marseille, because this is something that people will argue about endlessly. There are people who say, "Oh, don't go to Marseille, it's awful." I think it's a fine city to go if you just don't go to the projects, like,
Yeah. And we were a few people. We were talking about it in the Facebook group. Like I kind of expected Marseille to have that a bit rough around the edges type of vibe, because from what I had heard, but that doesn't really bother me. It's not a polished place like God or something.
Yes.
But it has a lot of character.
Yeah.
It's definitely very multicultural, which I think is a strength. I mean, I was staying near the train station, and there were a lot of kebabs. There was a lot of traditional hammams. I regret not having a chance to visit a hammam there. Lots of North African communities. So, I think maybe if some people want to have like a very classic or traditional French experience, they might be surprised that there's actually, a lot of
multi-ethnic areas.
Areas. But, I would say like some of the reputation that it's a little less clean. That was my experience. I saw a lot of graffiti. There's street art in the Cours Julien, which are these beautiful murals, but then just all over the city, there was a lot of just random graffiti that is not pretty, like just tags, just people writing their names. And it's unfortunate, it sort of spoils it. But otherwise, I think some people on the Facebook group were asking about feeling safe or not, like walking around at night. And I would say absolutely. Like even by the train station, which is not the nicest area, coming home from dinner at night, even if I wasn't with my husband, I would feel fine. You keep your wits about you like you would in any big city. It is a big city. Yeah. But I would say I'm glad that we made time for it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. That was very informative. And did you find the Lubéron to be as romantic as you had hoped?
I did. I had high expectations. Oh my goodness. I was looking at all the pictures and wondering, is it really that stunning? And it is. Yeah. In fact, the pictures don't even really capture. So definitely it's somewhere I want to come back. Yeah. And definitely recommend.
All right. Thank you so much, Denise. You've been a delight to talk to. And I will put your notes on joinusinfrance.com, where people can see all of the places you went to, all the names all spelled out and everything.
Wonderful.
And thank you again for coming on the podcast, because I really couldn't do this without so many people like you who are very generous with their time.
And thank you for making this podcast, because this is how I discovered a lot of tips, and it made the trip a lot smoother with all your advice, particularly the episodes about the driving. I use that a lot, so thank you so much.
You are very welcome.
Okay.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Thank you, Lynn Krug, John W. Glass, Scott, Michelle Lewis, Brad and Laurel Bui, I'm not sure how to say that in English, B-U-I, Bui, for pledging to support the show on Patreon this week. Patrons enjoy several rewards that you'll find listed at patreon.com/join us. That's PATREON.com. Join us with no spaces or dashes. I share exclusive content with my patrons, including help with your French comprehension. And I'm about to release one that has to do with French, about whether or not you should say vous or tu. This is something that Americans often get wrong. But on Patreon, I also share stories about France, photos, and membership into a secret Facebook group. And of course, patrons can message me directly through Patreon, and these messages always get top priority. And if you're not sure your itinerary for France is as good as it needs to be, let me review it for you. It'll cost you $50, but you'll know that I'll catch the things that you might not be aware of. If you'd like to set that up, email Annie@joinusinfrance.com and write itinerary review in the subject line. My thanks also to Killen for sending in a one-time donation by using the green button on any page on joinusinfrance.com that says tip your guide. And if you'd like to support the show without spending a penny you wouldn't have otherwise, before you go shopping on Amazon, go to the bottom of any page on joinusinfrance.com and click on the Amazon ad or the booking ad. They both do the same thing. Because you came to those sites through Join Us, I get a small commission, and it does not cost you a penny more. And that's wonderful because it pays for the bills for this show, you know, the transcription, the putting together all the graphics, all of these things, like hosting the data files, the audio file, all that stuff costs money. For my personal update this week, I've been working hard on the Saint-Germain-des-Prés tour for the Voice Map app. I've done 3 already, and so you'd think this 4th one would be easier. It is easier in many ways, but you still have to make a lot of decisions. Like I've got 90% of the spots where I want to take you completely nailed down. I know what I don't want you to miss. Now the question is, what order should I take you in? With the Montmartre tour, it was pretty obvious. I wanted to avoid steps as much as possible and end with the Sacré-Cœur because that's a much better experience in my opinion. But with Saint-Germain, you know, there's so many great places I could start. And there are places that I enjoy going to just to look. Like there's the oldest tree in Paris is in Saint-Germain, but it's kind of out of the way a little bit. It'll add some walking to the tour. So like, should I skip it? Should I add it? Anyway, if I don't put it in the tour, you know, I'll talk about it on the podcast anyway. So, you know, when I'm writing a tour and hunting around for the best stories to take you to, I tend to keep my head down and not do very much else. But there's the bird count on Sunday, and there's no way I'm going to miss that, even though it's going to be hard. I give the birds so many seeds that sometimes I have like 30, 40 birds at once. I'm going to have a hard time determining what species of bird I'm looking at, but I'll try it. We'll see. And we're going to the yearly Panto on Saturday. That's an English tradition, and we've much enjoyed it as a family since moving back to France with our daughter. You know, she was 7 when we left the US, and so we wanted to keep her hearing English, not just from us, but from other people. So she knew that, you know, we speak English, it's normal. And so we started going to the Panto, and then we started having friends who were in the Panto. This year, I don't think we know anybody who's in the Panto, but it's just hilarious. It's very funny and it's very silly. So we, even though she's 21 now, we keep going every year. It's very fun. And next week I'll also batch produce 3 episodes for the weeks I'll be away in Paris. So these will be episodes with no thank yous, no personal update, and probably really basic show notes. because I'm batch producing and I won't have anything to say. But I'll be back to my normal thorough show notes and transcripts later in February. Lots of people don't think to look for a podcast to help them plan their trip to France, so please tell them about it. They'll find the Join Us in France Travel podcast anywhere they get their podcasts, but also Spotify, and I get a lot of listeners on Spotify these days, Pandora, Apple Podcasts, and like I said, anywhere you can get a podcast. Send questions or feedback to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Have a great week of trip planning or a great, wonderful week in France, and I'll talk to you next week. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2020 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.